If it's anything like that last chapter, that might be a 6-star god tier book. This feels like a fever dream, but not in a good way. I loved it so much, and I also deeply despise everything that happened. I did, however, feel very sick to my stomach while reading this. It's raining quite hard. I'm hoping it's gonna be like an ambiance and not a distraction. Anyways, if you are used to watching my videos, this is a very different background than what you are normally used to seeing. I am abroad right now. I'm in Paris, France, and today is quite a rainy day. So I'm having a little day in for the morning time. I have plans in the evening, but I thought I'd film my January wrap up with you guys today. I actually feel like I had a fairly good reading month in the month of January, even though I was quite busy with prepping for a move and also prepping for school and all the things that I had to do in the month of January. I felt like I got a lot of reading in and a lot of things that I really enjoyed reading. I unfortunately cannot show you any of my books, my physical books with me, because I don't have them. It's kind of sad that I don't have my physical books. I feel like I'm in mourning because I sometimes I'm just like, what I would do to be able to sit by my beautiful window that I can put a picture of and read a book, like read a physical book. I do know I'm going to London, and that makes me very tempted to buy books, like maybe, but also I have to bring them back. Whatever books I buy, I have to bring them back. So lots of kind of puzzle pieces all need to fit together for me to be able to bring back some books. If I see any that I'm like, oh my god, I need this, maybe I'll buy it. That was a side tangent. We're here today to talk about all the books I read in the month of January. That number would be 10, I believe. I have my data and like my reflections and thoughts in 2 different places. I have some in my reading journal, and then I also have some on my Fable and in my Fable reviews. We're just gonna start out with the first book I read this month, and that happens to be Witchcraft for Wayward Girls by Grady Hendrix. This is my first horror book, I think, almost ever. Essentially, in this book, we follow a 15-year-old girl named Fern, and she's from Alabama. In about 1970, she gets pregnant out of wedlock, and this is like obviously not a great thing for her. So her family sends her to this home for wayward girls. She meets a bunch of friends there, and she spends her pregnancy there. But while she's there, she also is given a book by this librarian. It's an occult book about witchcraft. But, and this is a tagline in the book, there's always a price to be paid, and it's usually paid in blood. This made me never ever want to get pregnant ever in my life, because a lot of this horror was like body horror with pregnancy, and I was going in thinking like, oh boo, kind of. I guess it's more thriller, but I was thinking like I was gonna be like scared to read it. It wasn't scary to read it. Generally, most of the book felt a lot like literary fiction to me, and then we would have these times where something really horrible and gross happens. It's really just gross. It's a lot of body horror. Ew, but I wasn't scared. So I think I was expecting like fear from a horror book, versus this just kind of grossed me out. Trigger warning: fingernails. If you don't like things being done to fingernails, this book is not for you. I really enjoyed my time reading the book because I think it touched on a lot of good topics. I felt like I knew what it was really like to be pregnant as a child out of wedlock in the 70s, and what it would have felt like, how you would have been treated, a lot of the behaviors you would see. But I feel like I was supposed to take away this bigger message and theme, and I can point some out. Like I can point out some of the bigger messages and themes that were throughout this book, but I feel like it didn't take it away with me, if that makes sense. Yes, I see that they're pointing to, you know, the patriarchy, and they're pointing to religion, and there's a lot of nods to classism and racism and like all of these broader topics. I felt like maybe I wanted a much narrower lesson that I could take with me and remember and be like, that was the point of this book. I think there was a lot of points to this book, and they were all great points, but I think it made it hard for me to take away something individual and something specific. However, this book has really stuck with me, especially the gross moments, body horror moments. There was like 2 or 3 that were like, I'm gonna barf. Those have really stuck with me. The messages and themes, however, those are the things that I've kind of lost, and I think that was the point of the book, but I think it was told in a way that there was so much to take away that you couldn't take away all of it. I think it needed to narrow. I ended up rating it a 3.5 out of 5, and I would really recommend this book overall. I think for a first horror, it was pretty good. Like I wasn't terrified, like I wasn't like, oh my god, I'm gonna die, but it was really gross. So the next book I read after that, I needed a little bit of a break, so I ended up reading The Stopover by T.L. Swan. This is like a billionaire workplace romance, really fun, really goofy. Essentially, our main girl Emily gets on a flight from London to NYC, and her flight ends up getting upgraded for some reason. She's had like this horrible day, and her flight gets upgraded. She's very happy about it. She gets to sit in first class, and she she's next to this really fine man. Of course she would be, you know, we're reading a romance book. And essentially their flight gets kind of stuck, has to be diverted or something, like they get stuck in London or they get stuck somewhere, and then they have a one-night stand and never see each other again, don't exchange numbers, whatever. A few years later, Emily's applying to her dream job and she gets that dream job in journalism, and guess who happens to be the CEO slash her boss? It's the one-night stand guy from the London to NYC plane. Of course it is, you know? The amount of times that our MC called the FMC a bitch was kind of baffling. I was honestly surprised at how much I enjoyed the book. Like, that was definitely a turnoff. Every time it would happen, I'd be like, oh, right, that's why I'm hating this book. But then it wouldn't happen for a while, and I was like, wait, this is kind of fun. I love a good workplace romance. And then he would say it again, and I'd be like, right, so I can't root for you. It was very conflicting because the general plot, the vibe, the tropes, the writing, it wasn't bad and I was really enjoying it, but then that would happen and I'm like, wait a minute, can I redeem this? No, I can't. So I'm in like this standstill where I really hate the MMC, but everything else about this book is like a good fun time and what I was wanting. Was it a literary masterpiece? No. Was I expecting that? No. It was exactly what I wanted in the moment. I was very conflicted on my reading because of that, because that was the one thing where I was like, okay, this makes it hard for me to root for you as a romance, as a romantic couple in this book. However, every other aspect of this book could have been 4 stars. So I ended up rating it a 2.5. It was just really fun, and that was the only thing that I could point to you right now and say, I didn't like that. Everything else was a fun, good time. Next, I read Metal Slinger by Rachel Snyder. This is a fantasy romance that I've had on my shelf forever, and I really was going to unhaul it. I am so glad that I kept it, like actually so glad. Our main character, Bryn, grew up in Alaha. It's like this little island kind of border country. She trained to be in the guard because she's an orphan. She was found on a boat when she was very young, and the king and the royal family of this Alaha, this island, has taken her in and helped her to train to be a guard and make a life for herself. The country of Alaha goes to a market in Kenta to, essentially it's a supply run. Since they live on an island, it's really hard for them to get supplies and things they need, so they have this trade agreement. Every year they go to the market. This year our main character Bryn is going, and she stirs up some trouble. Of course she does. She unknowingly kind of breaks a centuries-long peace treaty with this country, and it's like, well, oh shit, what do we do now? She breaks this peace treaty with this mysterious soldier who's a little broody, tall, dark, and handsome. And Quinky Dink, he shows up in Alaha a few weeks later as a prisoner and may or may not be trying to get the attention of our FMC Bryn. And they essentially embark on a journey to uncover her long lost past of her orphan status and all these things. I was a little not mysterious, that's literally not the right word at all. I was a little suspicious of plot lines in the book and things. Like, there was definitely probably some holes that I picked up on but didn't really push my mind to think about more because I was just having a fun, goofy time. And in the end, I was like, wait a minute. If I had put literally an ounce of thought into this, I could have guessed the plot twist, but I didn't. So I was happily surprised. I did really start to get more and more angry as the book went on at certain characters. But after the plot twist, I kind of understand and like, it's fine. And it was all intentional, which is what matters to me. Was I really frustrated throughout? Yes. But once I got to the plot twist, I was like, wait a minute. It's all tying up in a neat little bow, and I'm happy about it. At the end, it had a preview for the second book, Light Wielder, and that preview, oh my god, had my jaw on the floor. Best part of the book by far. That little preview at the end of the book, the first chapter of the next book, jaw-dropping, made me want to rate this book 5 stars. But then I sat and thought, and I was like, wait, so technically this chapter wasn't a part of Metal Slinger, so I can't rate Metal Slinger 5 stars. I mean, it was in the physical book of Metal Slinger, but I'm like, it's not the story of Metal Slinger, so that needs to go into my next rating for the next book in the series. It was actually that chapter better than the plot twist, might I add. Like, oh my god. I ended up on a 4-star rating for Metal Slinger, and I'm really excited to get to Light Wielder, the next book, because if it's anything like that last chapter, that might be a 6-star god tier book. Next, I read Alchemy of Secrets by Stephanie Garber. This was a highly anticipated release for me because I really enjoy the Caraval series. The Once Upon a Broken Heart trilogy was not my super duper favorite. I do really like Caraval though. I was quite disappointed by the this book, I feel, for many reasons. This book follows our main character who has always kind of believed in magic, believed in things that normally someone at her age wouldn't believe in. She's kind of in college, she's going to university, and she signs up, registers for this class that's kind of like secret society-esque, but not really. You go take a class at this old abandoned movie theater with the professor, and you don't know who the professor is. You just have to go and trust the process and find the class. So she goes to take this class essentially about magic and legends and myths in Los Angeles, and she believes them to a point where I'm like, is this really plausible? An 18-year-old really be like, yeah, this makes sense. It felt very juvenile, even though it was Stephanie Barber's first adult. Things were just kind of thrown at our FMC. She's a damn cockroach, because any other character in any other book, the amount of things thrown at her, they would have died. This girl can survive anything. The nuclear apocalypse, like, I don't even know. She's like a damn cockroach, because anything that was thrown at her magically survived. No skill, no thought, no plan. She just like lived. It is a series, and I don't think I'm gonna continue on with the series. I just don't feel like I need to, / it was a valuable enough book for me to want to continue on with it. Like, even now, I think the whole time I was kind of just lost, like, wait, this feels like a fever dream, but not in a good way. This feels like a fever dream that like would actually happen to me, and then I would be like, that made no fucking sense. And that's kind of what this book felt like. It made no fucking sense sometimes. And I'm like, your book can have magic and whimsy and like nonsensical happenings, but still have a through line, something that makes sense, something that brings it all together. It kind of just felt like we were just throwing things in because we wanted it to be like this whole confusing mess and web, and I'm like, yes, it was that, but it was hard to unravel. It didn't make sense in the end because it was so convoluted. I don't know, that was my take. I feel like I've seen some similar takes online. It wasn't bad. I rated it 3 stars. Like, I had an enjoyable enough time. Next, I read one of probably my favorite books of the year so far, and that was Reign of Shadows and Endings by Melissa K. Rorich. It was baffling how many feelings of love and hate I could feel simultaneously about a characters plural, and the whole book. I loved it so much, and I also deeply despise everything that happened. I can't even, like, I want to read the second book so bad. I think this series, I fear it's gonna end up being like god tier for me in the end. In this world, there are the humans, the Fae, and the legacies. Our FMC is a Fae. The Fae have been created by the gods to serve the legacies, and the humans are kind of just like there. We're coming around to this really big selection ceremony where the legacy choose the Fae that they want to serve their kingdom and their princes for the rest of eternity, however long they live. Our main girl is fully expecting not to be chosen, fully expecting to go under the radar, just get chosen for something, and then kind of like live out the rest of her life for the most part as she wishes. Because she didn't place very well in the aptitude test, she wasn't really sought out by a lot of the heirs that were looking for personal sources and sources of power, so she wasn't really expecting to get chosen. It's a fantasy book. Who do you think gets chosen? Obviously our FMC, and she gets chosen by the Arius heir, which is the most notoriously shadow daddy bad place to be. You don't want to be chosen by the Arius heir. She's chosen by the Arius heir. She has to become his source and serve him for the rest of eternity. That's what we're following, and it's very, very dark. Very dark. The way that Melissa K. Rorich did this, like, at first I hated someone, and then it switched and I hated the other one, and then it switched and I hated the other one. And I was like, both of them are doing like shit things. Tell me how you're making me love one of them so much, and then I love the other one that I just hated. It was baffling and bizarre, and it actually makes me want to start the second book of this series today, which, you know, it is a possibility. It's quite a rainy day. If you are okay with a dark fantasy romance, I say do it. It was so good. The first book felt so large and all-encompassing in this world, and I can't even imagine where we're gonna go with the next 3. I'm so excited to continue with this series, finish this series, be in this series for as long as possible, and I did buy all of the Lady of Darkness books after reading this first one, because I will be going back and reading the rest of the Lady of Darkness series. Next, The Compound by Aisling Raw. I was quite literally so excited, and I was disappointed. The Compound is about many characters, but we have our main character, a woman, and in this world, it's kind of shit. Like, no one really wants to live in the real world, and our main girl applies to be on this reality TV show where you watch all these contestants in this compound for the summer, and they are charged with earning themselves things to live. They come in and there's like bare necessities, really nothing. You don't have a couch, you don't have like food, you have to earn these things. So there's group challenges and then personal challenges. Group challenges get you group items, and then your personal challenges can get you personal items like a special like diamond necklace for yourself. I'm not quite sure I enjoyed it. I'm a little confused with my time in this book. Like, I understand the commentary of the various themes in this book. Materialism, parasocial relationships with people on the internet and television and reality TV, and the parasocialness of it and how it's literally anything but a reality. Like, I understood all of the things that go into this book, and I get the point, but I'm not totally sure I enjoyed the journey, how we got there, what happened. I felt quite disconnected from the characters in the first half of the book. The characters start to devolve in the second half of the book. I started to feel very connected to them then, but still quite unbothered. Like, I felt more connected to them as of like, I understand them, but I don't quite care what happens to them. I can't bring myself to be like, yeah, I want her to win. I don't care. I guess I like understand your motivation, but I don't care. When I wasn't reading, I didn't feel like I wanted to pick the book up. When I was reading, it was fine. I think this had a lot to do with the hangover that I had from Reign of Shadows and Endings. Not an actual hangover, a book hangover. Let me preface that. Nothing is kind of hitting the same as that book did, so I feel like this book suffered a little bit because of it. I rated this at 2.5. Phantasma by Kaylee Smith. I was so excited for this book. I really wanted to love it. Spoiler alert, I did not love it. It's very much like Caraval, if you've read Caraval. I honestly can't even remember the plot. I remember it's set in New Orleans and her sister goes missing, and she kind of figures out that her sister is probably at Phantasma, and so she follows her sister to Phantasma and finds out that the only way to get her sister back is to win. So she has to play the game, obviously. It's like this kind of carnival-esque, macabre game that they have to play. I could not lock in. I had no real negative criticisms or like complaints specifically about this book. I don't think it was bad. I just could not care less about anything that happened, and that's no fault of the book or the authors. I really think it was me and my book hangover still. I can't really get over Legacy Book 1. Like, it's sucking onto my soul and it's keeping me there. I really need to read the second book. The middle of this book started to wake me up. I started to like there was challenges, some fun things, like different things that I hadn't really seen in a fantasy before, and it started to like wake me up and be like, wait, maybe I do care. But then the end was very relationship centric, and I was like, you lost me. I didn't care about the relationship. I couldn't care less if they ended up together. I really didn't like either of them, and therefore I didn't really care if they found happiness in love. I feel like this was completely a me problem. However, like, if you want to go into this book, read it. By all means, like, I don't think it's a bad book. I just think me in this moment and reading Legacy, I like nothing else was comparing, and that was just the reality of the situation, and that's okay. I just felt like a little bit, but like, why am I reading this though? Like, the entire time that was my feeling. Like, why should I care? Why am I reading this? I rated Phantasma 2.5. And then, crazy plot twist here. Actually, let me say something. I finished my entire TBR for January. On the book pause for me because I've never done that before. Is anyone shocked? Me. I'm shocked. Let me raise my hand. I'm shocked. This was the last book that I had to read to finish my TBR in January, and it was Alchemized. Oh my god, I read Alchemized this month. It was a lot, to be quite honest. If you don't know what Alchemized is about, it is by Sin-Lin Yu, and it was originally a Hermione fanfic called Manacled on, I believe, AO3. Maybe Wattpad AO3, like that type of vibe. And then it got picked up for traditional publishing, but obviously a lot of things had to change in order for Manacled to become Alchemized. The plot is essentially the bad side, what would have been, you know, Voldemort's side, the Death Eaters, won the war. And you're seeing the aftermath of what that means for everyone who was on Voldemort's side and also not on Voldemort's side. Essentially, that's kind of how it goes. But again, it wasn't Voldemort, it was completely changed. In this book, you have the necromancers and then the alchemists, essentially. So there's like this good, I can't even really explain it. There's a good and a bad way to use magic. And the bad way is necromancers taking control of the dead versus taking control of metals and taking control of fire and elements. Alchemy, that's good. Necromancy, vivimancy, bad. Using humans, using stuff. The necromancers have won this war. It's a very religious war, which was something different kind of from Manacled Fable, which I had read last year, it was a very heavy religious aspect brought in, and I really enjoyed that addition. To be quite honest, a lot of the book was the same, just with different words and character names and things like that. A lot of it was the same, but there were a lot of aspects. I wouldn't say a lot. There was a good portion of aspects that were different. Not huge plot devices, not huge changes, but there were some small details that I think made Alchemized darker than Manacled, in my opinion. I think it was an extreme improvement from the original in the sense that the world building was really strong, the characters were really strong, the plot and the way that it was executed was also really strong. I did not like this book. Let me put it that way. I didn't like it because it was so hard to read, but I did appreciate it and think that it was excellently executed. I did, however, feel very sick to my stomach while reading this and after reading this. I think I chose the exact wrong time in my life to read this book because I chose to read this 4 days. I started this 4 days before I moved to Paris, and I was like, I'm gonna finish this in 4 days. I read one day like 600 pages of this book. It was a lot. Like, arguably, when I'm sad and upset and anxious about leaving everything I know and the comfort of everything I know, I'm reading this book about war, the terrible things that happen in war, and kind of a similar like melancholy vibe. That's a lot. Like, obviously I'm not comparing my life to this book in any way, shape, or form, but I mean, like, this kind of, these themes and everything are not what I should have been reading when I was about to like up in my life, in a sense. So that was probably a bad choice on my part. However, I did annotate this. I had like, I wouldn't say a good time. I felt quite anxious and emotional the entire read. I like literally hated every single character in this book except for the last 5 important ones. They all just sucked. Like, what the actual fuck? This whole entire book was just like devastating. And that was kind of like, if one word to describe this book, devastating. I could also throw in disgusting. I could also throw in heart-wrenching. I could also throw in brutal. I think this book is worth the read if you think you can do it. Like, not, can you read the, if you think you can do it. No, I mean, like, if you think you mentally can handle this, which I probably shouldn't have and very nearly couldn't handle this. Many a time I debated putting it down because it was so much. If you feel like you can and you want to, I say do it. If anything in this book where you read the trigger warnings or you like, I don't know if I can read that, don't. It was hard, it was difficult, it was gruesome and devastating and gross and a lot of things. Like, I felt more scared and sick in this book than I did in the horror book that I read this month, if that tells you anything. It was heavy, it was hard, but it was a really well executed book, and round of applause for you, Sin, because I am interested to see what you do next. As if they're watching this, I'm interested to see what Sin Lin Yu does next and what world they create next. Alchemized is a 4.5 for me. 4.5 stars. We have 2 more books to go through. Play Along by Liz Tomford. That was the next book. I read this almost entirely in the airport during my 11, yes, clock it, 11-hour layover in Philly on the way to Paris. So I had a long time. I ended up walking 5 miles in the Philly airport and listening to this at the same time. Quite an enjoyable experience, if I'm being honest. Like, I would recommend it. This book, the audiobook, really good. I was worried about the audiobook because the narrator in Caught Up by Liz Tomford was not good for the man. Like, actually made the book honestly unreadable, unlisten-toable. This audiobook narrator, good, very good. No complaints. I really loved Isaiah, the way that they worked together through everything. Let me even back up and explain the plot. We have Isaiah Rhodes, who has had a crush on Kennedy forever and ever and ever. She became a team athletic trainer a while back, and he has had a crush on her since she arrived there. Had to like meet cute, and then they found out who the other one was, like player, medical staff. They were not about to start that. So Isaiah Rhodes has had a crush on Kennedy forever. And one night they get really drunk in Vegas together for a reason, and they get married on accident. And then they have to figure it out, and it's really good. I love the way that they work through everything together. I love Isaiah and Kennedy with all my heart. They deserve the world, and I really like felt for Isaiah and the way he had to be so happy and positive for everyone, and he really just wanted to be anything but that. Like, sometimes you don't feel happy and positive, but you have to be it, and like, I think that really resonated with me as a character. Same for Kennedy. She had a lot of characteristics that I really resonated with. I love the series. I'm really excited to read the last book. I think that this was probably my second favorite book in the series, and I'm very excited to see how it ends. Play Along is a 4 stars. Last book I read in January, okay? I read Heated Rivalry. I really need to watch the show still. I haven't watched it yet. I'm very excited to. I just haven't brought myself to pay for HBO Max yet. This book was so cute. I don't even think I need to explain the plot, but I will if you want to listen to it. We have Shane Hollander and then Ilya Rozanov. Ilya is a Russian hockey player who gets signed to Boston, and then Shane Hollander is from Canada and he gets signed to a Canadian team, and then the league kind of makes them up to be these huge rivals, when in reality they're in love and they're fine. I feel like most people probably know what this book is about. This book was so cute. It made me want to cry sometimes. It took me a minute low-key to connect with the characters and connect with this book. It got a high rating, let me say that. This was a good book. It didn't get a 5-star like I thought it was going to. It took me a second to get into it, to connect with the characters. It could have also been when I read it, because I was literally in a temporary hostel with all the people from my program in Paris. And like, I was reading 5 pages a day, 5 pages on this hour and then 5 pages the next hour. And it was like very choppy reading experience. It was a good book. I just think the way that I read it was not conducive to me like absolutely amazing loving it, but I can't wait to read the next one in this series, in this couple. I am in the middle of right now reading the first book in this series, like completely the first book, and I don't like it as much if I'm being honest, but I want to read the second book in this duet, like with Hollander and Rozanov. I think it'll be way better than the first one in my opinion. Like, I think I will like it more, not way better, but I think I will like it a lot more just with the emotional depth and stuff. However, I really did enjoy my time with Heated Rivalry. I ended up rating it at 3.5 and I would stand by that rating. I think if I had read it like all in one night, giggling in my bed like up late, I would have, and I think it would have made the book better, but just my situation kind of wasn't conducive to that reading experience, so I think it might have hindered a little bit how I felt about the book in that moment. I really enjoyed my reading month in January. I think generally I had a really great time. I read some books that I think are going to shape my reading taste this year and shape how I continue on with series and what series I'm focusing on and the types of books that I'm reading. So I'm really happy with my reading month in January. Let me know what you read, if you read any of these books in January or otherwise, and your thoughts on them. I would love some recs for Paris. If anyone has been to Paris and was like, yes, this restaurant you need to go to, yes, this museum, drop them in the comments below, please, because I am trying to make a list of all the places I want to go and things I want to do before I leave. But I have the semester here, so I have some time. So if you ever think of any, let me know. I love you all dearly. Thank you so much for watching. Check out my Etsy in the description box below. I haven't been able to put on any of the inserts that I've been making because I don't have a printer and I don't have the resources to print any of the inserts that I'm making, but they are there. I love you so much. I'll talk to you when I talk to you. Bye.